Right now, the first wave released. After 48 days, families are reunited with those taken hostage by Hamas. What today's success means for future releases and the ongoing ceasefire. Plus, a flood of allegations from New York Mayor Eric Adams to rock singer Axl Rose. The legal reasons behind a slew of sexual assault claims within the last few days. Home for the holidays and back again. A look at how the highways and airways are faring after the Thanksgiving holiday. And shop till you drop. How successful have stores been at bringing back the holiday shopping spree? Thanks for joining us. I'm Nick Smith, in today for Nicole Burley. 24 hostages have been released from the hands of Hamas after 7 weeks in captivity. The highly anticipated release included 13 Israeli citizens, 10 Thai citizens, and 1 Filipino. This is the first group to be released from Gaza as part of a 4-day truce that started today. Israel has also released 150 Palestinian prisoners under that ceasefire, which could be extended if more hostages are allowed to go home. We're following reaction from the White House and from lawmakers in Washington. But first, let's get to correspondent Robert Sherman live in Tel Aviv. Robert, these hostages are undergoing checkups at hospitals before they can actually get back to their families.
Right. Yeah, that's our understanding here, Nick, is the IDF saying that those hostages now been in their custody. Now they've been transferred over to hospitals where they'll begin that reunification process. And we're starting to get a better idea of who these hostages are. And I mean, you see the ages of some of these hostages, some of them just little children, others are the elderly as well, all women and children in that group of Israeli citizens. And then, as you mentioned as well, something that we did not expect would be happening today, but 10 Thai citizens, 1 with citizenship in the Philippines as well, being released here. There's this overwhelming sentiment here, Nick, that this is a start, and there are a lot of people who felt as though that it was time to get some hostages out. But the message that we get from people is very clear. This is not the end-all, be-all. This is not a time to celebrate victory if you're an Israeli citizen, as a lot of Israelis here saying that it's not going to be considered a success until all of the hostages are home. Nick.
Robert, thank you so much. I know this is a situation that continues to develop. Families want more information, more answers, and it's so fluid, Robert, and also so painful at the same time. Robert Sherman in Tel Aviv. Robert, thank you. Let's bring in correspondent Kelly Meyer live at the White House. Kelly, what's the status of the Americans being held by Hamas?
Well, Nick, the White House is still holding out hope that 3 Americans, 2 women, and a child will be among the 50 released over the course of the next few days. The American girl, her name is Abigail. She's the youngest of the American hostages, and she turns 4 years old today. President Biden is keeping the pressure on leaders in the Middle East, and he kept that pressure on to lock in this hostage deal. The president and his team working on the deal since the early days of the war, hours after Hamas' attack on Israel. And when the White House learned that several Americans were among the roughly 240 hostages held in Gaza, President Biden became personally involved in the negotiations with leaders of Qatar, Egypt, and Israel. The White House tells News Nation that the administration didn't expect the Americans, those 3 Americans, to be the first group among them released today, but remain hopeful that there will be Americans among the 50 set to be released soon. A senior administration official saying the deal was structured in such a way to encourage the future release of hostages. And we also just heard from the White House, Nick, that the president continues to be briefed on the latest on the situation, and we could hear from him possibly soon here.
Kelly, let me ask you a couple of questions. What has the mood been at the White House? As in, can we say that they are taking a victory lap, or, Kelly, are they being more subdued with the developments of today?
I think all week we've been hearing President Biden saying and physically showing his fingers being crossed. We saw that Monday as he did the turkey pardon on the South Lawn here at the White House. He said it again when he walked out and spoke with reporters on Nantucket on Thanksgiving yesterday. He really didn't want to give a full update until all of this is done. And I think that's the general consensus, not only from the president, but when we were talking with White House officials, we were talking with National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby here, that they really are just holding out hope that all of these Americans can be included in this, especially those two American women and one child, as we said, who turns 4 years old today. They are just holding out hope in the sense that they want to make sure that they are among those released, waiting to see, of course, if Hamas holds true on their promise at the end of the day. So I think a lot of it is watching and waiting and just holding their breath to make sure that these Americans come home safely.
That totally makes sense, Kelly. Another situation where you don't want to put the cart before the horse. Kelly Meyer at the White House. Kelly, thank you. And as Kelly said, we are expecting to hear from the president in the next couple of minutes. We'll bring that to you live as soon as it happens. Here with us is Jonathan Schanzer, Senior Vice President for Research at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I know that you have kept your eye on the situation happening right now with the release of these hostages. What is the mood right now, and are you optimistic about where we are with things?
Well, look, this is good news today. We're seeing the beginning of a process that'll play out over the next 4, perhaps more days, maybe even as many as 6 or 7. I believe there even could be as many as 80 hostages released from the Israeli side, and roughly triple that from the Hamas list. But there is obviously a crisis that is going to endure long past this hostage release and prisoner exchange. Hamas obviously is going to continue to hold more than 100 other hostages. And the Israelis, I think, at this point are committed to the complete and total destruction of Hamas. So when this pause ends, we're going to see renewed fighting in central Gaza, in southern Gaza. We heard the Israeli defense minister say that this could take another 2 months. I believe it could take even longer than that. So we're really at the beginning of the road here.
Jonathan, I know that you have sources on the ground and that you have more experience in this space, which causes me to ask the following question. One of the reasons I was wondering why these particular hostages have been released, I understand it's a negotiation, but is it also a situation where having these hostages becomes almost burdensome to Hamas as well, that they decide who to let go because they can't move and maybe keep their location as secret as possible?
I think that's a big part of it. I heard today from a former senior Israeli official who was talking about the challenge of taking care of the younger hostages, perhaps some of the older ones that are not as healthy. And then there's, of course, the fact that they're being kept underground and that perhaps they've been moved around quite a bit because of fear that the Israelis might be tracking them. So at a certain point, it does become a burden for Hamas. We'll see them offload, again, 50 or perhaps even 80 of them over the course of the next few days. That is in their interest to do so. That's why they're doing it. But look, it's going to be a fluid situation. I think the Israelis are going to try to push for more if they can get them, even if it means extending this ceasefire for another several days, which would allow Hamas to improve its position militarily in anticipation of that next round of fighting.
Jonathan, I know you've been watching this. Like I said, how has today been with what you see as the result? Has this been a successful day, or you're like, Nick, we still have a long way to go?
Look, it's been successful in the sense that it was coordinated properly. The Israeli side, the Egyptian side, Hamas, even Qatar. But let me just say, I think the fact that the Qataris are at the forefront of this is really, it's a black eye for the White House. It's really an embarrassing moment for all involved. The Qataris right now, I think, are probably taking a victory lap. This is a tiny Gulf nation that is a sponsor of Hamas. They give them $150+ million a year. They have a Hamas headquarters in the country. So they are part of the problem, and now they're purporting to be part of the solution. So whatever happens today, whatever happens over the next week, we need to remember here that the U.S. has actually invited this country to take part in the process the way we're watching play out right now. And it's an embarrassment. We're going to need to have to revise rather that contract that we have with the Qataris to make sure that they're no longer supporting Hamas. That is really, I think, top of mind for everyone right now.
Jonathan, you are literally saying the quiet part out loud, because you know that we as the United States have assets in Qatar as well. So many countries do. And some have argued quietly that there's no way Qatari officials could not have known that some of this may have been happening because many of their leaders have found refuge in Qatar.
That's right. I mean, there's probably more than a dozen Hamas figures right now in Qatar. There was video that came out on the day of the attack on October 7th, where it showed some of these Hamas leaders cheering and celebrating the attack. We've seen them go on television on Al Jazeera, which is, of course, a Qatari-owned television station, inciting violence, really egging on this conflict. There is a serious problem here, and the United States is going to have to get a handle on it. Now, I understand why the White House might want to work with the Qataris right now, because they do seem to be the center of gravity. You've got, the Iranian foreign minister traveling there. You've got the head of the Mossad traveling there, but they are the arsonist and the firefighter. We need to send a clear message to them. You can't be both. You're going to have to choose which side you're on here. And if you're, if you want to be an American ally, if you want to be a Western ally, well, then it's time to stop sponsoring Hamas. This is extremely awkward.
And we know that the United States will have to answer a lot of questions when this is finally settled, but so will Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, Benjamin Netanyahu is obviously the prime minister that sat atop this entire structure. It was his security establishment that endured that really horrific intelligence failure on October 7th. It was his government that I think spent several days trying to figure out how to get back on its feet. Right now, his government is operating at I would say at a fairly high level. They're carrying out a war on several fronts. It's, of course, not just Hamas, but it's also Hezbollah, the Houthis attacking from Yemen. The Israelis do seem to be handling this crisis fairly well, but at some point, politics will catch up to all of this, and there will be calls for elections. There will be calls for a commission of inquiry looking into exactly what happened, how this failure transpired in the first place. So Netanyahu will be, I think, under the microscope, and he will likely have to step down. But I think really we're probably several weeks away. We're going to have to get through the release of these hostages. There'll be the resumption of the war, perhaps even the end of Hamas. It's at that point, I think, the Israelis will be ready to reconcile with the political fallout.
Jonathan, I swear I'm not going to take up your entire day, but I have so many questions that I just want to throw at you there. When we talk about even this ceasefire right now, there is a sense of calm for now, but we have made it clear that Benjamin Netanyahu has made it clear that he intends to continue the active engagement with Hamas to root them out of Gaza. Right now, as you know, there has been a lot of political uproar on the left because of all of that action and the destruction of Gaza. Right now, we don't see the same furor aimed at the administration because there is a ceasefire. Do you expect that to pick up again, or because hostages have been released and it seems as though the plan and the negotiation by Mr. Biden and others seems to be working, that will quiet the anger and the dissension from the left?
Well, look, I think it's a good question. My sense is that the administration will try to leverage this pause. And I've heard this from Israelis. They're actually fearful that the Biden administration may try to leverage this pause in order to try to extend the quiet. The Israelis, and you can see this on Israeli television, you can read it in the Israeli news, you can hear it from officials on the ground. They are not interested in extending this pause beyond the release of that last tranche of hostages. So as soon as the release stops, we can expect the Israelis to go back in, and it's going to pick up the pace. We're going to see probably an even fiercer battle. Let me just put it this way. What we've watched in northern Gaza has been tough, but now imagine that after 5 or 6 or 7 days, Hamas has been able to pull out additional rockets from those underground bunkers, and they're able to deploy their forces in ways that will be better prepared to fight the Israelis. I think we're going to see a really tough battle coming in central and southern Gaza. Southern Gaza, by the way, is where a lot of those top leaders of Hamas are believed to be hiding out. They fled northern Gaza during the fighting over the last couple of weeks. They're in the bunkers underground there now. And so the Israelis are really looking to capture or kill them. They're looking to destroy the remaining infrastructure. This will not play well among the progressive left here in the United States. They will try to call for an end of the war. I think there are going to be attempts to try to brandish the whole sort of war crimes thing against Israel. Of course, we all know the Israelis have been fighting this war extremely responsibly. The key, in my view, is for the United States not to be squeezing Israel. The key is for the United States to be squeezing the Iranians, the Qataris, the Turks, the Malaysians, and perhaps some of the other Hamas patrons like Kuwait and Algeria. If we can push them to squeeze Hamas to lay down their arms and wave those white flags, come out of those tunnels and bunkers, that's how this war ends. That's how you stop the destruction. That's how you save more lives. And for some reason, we have not seen that approach taken by the United States or the Europeans, for that matter, certainly not from the UN. And I think it's really curious that we have not seen that approach up until now. Public calls for Hamas to come out with their hands up.
And Jonathan, in the middle of all of that are families who simply want their loved ones home safely. Jonathan Schanzer, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you.
We have a live look at the base where hostage transfer took place just a couple of hours ago. We're still awaiting the president to speak on this first wave in just a couple of minutes. We'll have more after this break.
Once retired, Marcus decided, I will never again work for another man or woman. I abandoned my corporate phone plan, and I'll get a new plan with Consumer Cellular for up to half the cost.
Let's go, birds.
When freedom calls, we're here to answer.
With Nurtec ODT, I can treat and prevent my migraine attacks all in one.
Don't take if allergic to Nurtec. Allergic reactions can occur, even days after using. Most common side effects were nausea, indigestion, and stomach pain. Talk to your doctor about Nurtec today.
Meet Gold Bond Daily Healing, a powerhouse lotion that moisturizes, heals, and smooths dry skin with 7 moisturizers and 3 vitamins. And new Gold Bond Healing Sensitive, clinically shown to heal and moisturize dry, sensitive skin. Gold Bond.
John Walsh here. Guess what? Occasional joint pain, you're going down. That's why there's Omega XL, a powerful joint pain relief supplement. It's natural, it's drug-free, it's really small, easy to swallow. It has over 35 years of clinical research supporting it. The results are undeniable.
Last week I walked 6 blocks. I was so proud of myself. You will remember what did it to you, and it was Omega XL.
I'm taking Omega XL because it works for me. And if it didn't, I wouldn't be backing it.
Go to OmegaXL.com/John Walsh or call the number at the bottom of your screen right now. Buy 1 bottle of Omega XL, get 1 free. That's 2 bottles for only $39.95. Plus, you'll also receive a bottle of Vitamin XL D3 absolutely free.
It's time for news about the news. Sling TV has the same news programming you love, starting at $40 a month. It's the same news programming you love, starting at $40 a month. That's what I just said. Right. It's the same news for less, starting at $40 a month. Sling.
Confused by the Medicare ABCs? If you have Original Medicare, then you have Parts A and B. Have you considered Part C? Medicare Part C is sometimes known as a Medicare Advantage plan, and it's one of the best ways to help protect yourself from out-of-pocket Medicare costs. If you only have Medicare Parts A and B, there are 3 things you should do. 1. Call the number on your screen. 2. Give the licensed insurance agent your zip code. 3. See what Part C plans with benefits are available to you. 1, 2, 3. It's that easy. Medicare Part C plans are available with benefits you may not be receiving with your current plan. Call now to enroll during the Medicare annual enrollment period. There may be a plan available in your area with benefits, but you won't know unless you 1. Call the number on your screen now. 2. Give the licensed insurance agent your zip code. 3. See what Part C plans with benefits are available to you. Medicare Part C plans are available now. Plans may include benefits you are not currently receiving. Call today. You don't get a new Medicare Advantage plan automatically. Call now to enroll during the Medicare annual enrollment period. If you already have a plan, call to find out if any changes have been made to your coverage for 2024. If you only have Medicare Parts A and B, there are 3 things you should do. 1. Call the number on your screen. 2. Give the licensed insurance agent your zip code. 3. See what Part C plans with benefits are available to you. 1, 2, 3. It's that easy. Medicare Part C plans are available with benefits you may not be receiving with your current plan. The Medicare Benefit Helpline is accepting calls right now to see what 2024 plans with benefits are available to you. Everyone on Medicare can call today for a free Medicare benefits review. The call is free. There's no obligation.
Call 800-557-5204. That's 800-557-5204. 800-557-5204. Call now.
Hi, I'm Daniel, the founder of Pretty Litter. By working with scientists and veterinarians, I was able to develop a long-lasting litter with advanced odor control, low dust, and most importantly, color-changing technology. So give it a try. Visit prettylitter.com today.
Welcome back. We're following breaking news this afternoon, the release of hostages under the control of Hamas and the exchange of prisoners being held by Israeli officials. We're waiting to hear from President Biden on the latest in this highly anticipated hostage release. We're also expected to hear from IDF. Let's get back to correspondent Robert Sherman, who is live in Tel Aviv on the ground. Robert, this continues to be a fluid situation. You and I were talking about this all morning. You have followed the details. What's the latest from where you are?
Hey there, Nick. We just got word from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just a couple of minutes ago. He put out this statement saying that they just completed the return of the first of our hostages, children, their mothers, and additional women. Each of them is an entire world. But I emphasize to you, the families, and to you, citizens of Israel, we are committed to returning all of the hostages. This is one of the aims of war, and we are committed to achieving all of the aims of war. That's important to listen to here, Nick, on a couple of fronts. One, this emphasis that all of the hostages must be returned, that this isn't the flag of victory. A start, maybe setting the table for the next stage, but certainly not the end-all, be-all. Everyone here is saying the same thing. You need to find a way to get all of the near 240 hostages out of Gaza. And then there's the other aspect as well. He said, this is one of the aims of war, and we are committed to achieving all of the aims of war. Well, the other one is destroying Hamas. That's the other one of the major two objectives that the Israelis have unabashedly talked about, is that they need to destroy Hamas to the point that Hamas cannot threaten Israelis again. And the reason that that's significant is that there are some who are floating the idea that maybe the war will not pick back up on the other side of this pause. The Israelis have tried to make it as abundantly clear as possible that that is what they intend to do once this pause is lifted. Will it actually happen? Only time will tell. Nick?
Well, Robert, before I let you go, you know, we've talked about even the destruction there in Gaza to the north. If this bombardment continues, is the assumption then that Israel will continue to make their path and their pathway down to the southern parts of Gaza as well?
This is what Israeli leadership has alluded to over the last few days. I mean, obviously, this campaign taking place in different time spans here. I mean, the first objective on the military front is taking total control of the northern portion of the Gaza Strip. And the latest that we heard from IDF leadership was that they had most of northern Gaza under their control, but there were still some fighters in the east that they had to deal with. And then they would be proceeding south to eliminate Hamas wherever they may be. That was their words there, to eliminate all fighters, all members of Hamas, and destroy them. So all signs point to that if this war does pick back up, they will be setting their eyes on the southern portion of the Gaza Strip at some point, Nick.
Robert, you know, okay, the first wave of hostages have been released, and I know this has to be a challenging situation on the ground because I would believe you have to be hearing different things from different people that you speak with. We've had a number of people on the show who are in favor of a ceasefire until everyone is back. Others are saying you cannot give Hamas a break. What are you hearing on the ground from those who may be expecting some family members to come home and others who say that, well, mine won't be in this first wave, but I still hold out hope?
I think that's a really astute question, Nick, because there is so much pressure on the ground here coming from different sides. And yes, I mean, you'll be hard-pressed to find somebody here who doesn't have a strong opinion about this in one way or another. There are some who believe that a deal should not have been cut and they should have focused on destroying Hamas, and maybe this deal isn't as good of one from the Israelis' perspective as they could have cut. On the other hand, you have people who believe every life is worth saving, every hostage is worth getting out, and if there's a deal that is on the table, it needs to be taken. So you have those two conflicting thoughts here. And the point that you made about just the way that pain is personal, and how people who are close to one another, who have loved ones or friends of friends who are being held in Gaza right now. Here's the thing, Nick, is that everybody in this country is 1 to 2 degrees of separation away from a victim of October 7th. That's the reality here. So that pain is being felt widespread here, and everyone views it as getting hostages back is like getting a member of the family back, because this community is so tightly knit.
Robert, we heard one person talk about it's a family that they never thought they'd be a part of. The released hostages, just to reiterate what you said, 13 Israelis, 10 Thai citizens, 1 Filipino citizen. And this is only the beginning. The hostages are now in Israel. And you said, Robert, that they are undergoing possible medical examination or evaluation?
That's our understanding, is that there was an initial medical evaluation that took place the moment that they got onto Israeli soil, and are now heading to hospitals, which they'll likely be reunited with family members there. I mean, think about it, Nick. I mean, it has been almost 50 days in captivity. I wouldn't even begin to fathom what those conditions have been like in Gaza while they were there, and what their health levels are like. And you see some of the hostages who were released. Some of them are elderly citizens as well. So that's another concern to take into consideration here. So that's definitely priority number one with the hostages, is get them the medical care that they need, and then take it from there.
Robert Sherman live in Tel Aviv. Robert, we will check back in with you on the ground and let us know if you see or hear anything. We will jump right back to you. Right now, a spokesman for the Israel Defense Forces is speaking to reporters. Right now, he is speaking in Hebrew. We will, of course, check back in as he continues to update the press and let us know exactly what's happening. They are talking about the release of these hostages. Once again, 13 Israeli, 10 Thai citizen, 1 Filipino citizen, and they are now in a ceasefire with Hamas, and they say they will continue that ceasefire as long as Hamas continues to release prisoners. We will continue to follow this, and we are also waiting for an update from President Biden on this first wave of hostages who have been released. We'll be right back after the break. Don't go anywhere. We will keep you updated on everything that's happening.
Right now, someone could be listed as the owner of your home and stealing thousands of dollars of your hard-earned equity.
Anybody who owns property should worry about home title theft. There's no other crime that is so easy, so quick, and so lucrative.
Your home, your equity, and your peace of mind can all be stolen in one fell swoop by home title thieves like Matthew Cox.
Nobody thinks that I can take their house. Nobody thinks that.
Believe it or not, a single-page document is all it takes to transfer proof of ownership out of your name.
People think, well, there's a whole huge process, but the truth is, it's a one-page document.
But it still must get through one final barrier, the county clerk.
When someone comes in with a fraudulent deed, if it's notarized and all the spaces are filled in, we by statute have to accept it. We cannot give it back to them and say, we know this is fraudulent, we're not going to file it. That's against the law.
It's a false sense of security. It's not real.
Bottom line is, yes, it happens, and we can't stop it from happening, and it only takes once for it to sting you, and it's a very sad thing to watch.
You've put your love into the house, and all of a sudden, it might not be yours. It's a devastating crime.
For pennies a day, Home Title Lock will monitor your title nonstop, alerting you to suspicious activity.
If you can get a warning notice that this first step has happened, you can stop the rest.
Meet Terry. He signed up for Home Title Lock and was immediately alerted to suspicious activity.
So I received a report and saw, hey, I have a lien against my property that I didn't know about. We got it fixed right away.
And if you call in the next 15 minutes and mention promo code LOCKIT, you'll receive your first 30 days absolutely free.
What would it do to your life if you lost your property? I mean, there's no price you can put on that.
Go online or call now, 1-800-938-6979.
She found it. The feeling of finding the psoriasis treatment she's been looking for. Sotyktu is the first of its kind once-daily pill for moderate to severe plaque psoriasis for the chance at clear or almost clear skin. It's like the feeling of finding that outfit psoriasis tried to hide from you, or finding your swimsuit is ready for prime time. Dad, once daily Sotyktu is proven to get more people clearer skin than the leading pill. Don't take if you're allergic to Sotyktu. Serious reactions can occur. Sotyktu can lower your ability to fight infections, including TB. Serious infections, cancers including lymphoma, muscle problems, and changes in certain labs have occurred. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, liver or kidney problems, high triglycerides, or had a vaccine or plan to. Sotyktu is a TYK2 inhibitor. TYK2 is part of the JAK family. It's not known if Sotyktu has the same risks as JAK inhibitors. Find what plaque psoriasis has been hiding. Ask your dermatologist about Sotyktu for clearer skin. So clearly you. Sotyktu.
Hi, I'm Montel Williams. The Medicare annual enrollment period is now, and it doesn't last long. This is the time of the year to make sure you're in the right plan at the right price with the right coverage for you. First, make the free call and speak with a licensed insurance agent to discuss the plans with available benefits in your area. Second, our partners offer plans from Humana, Aetna, Anthem, United Healthcare, Kaiser Permanente, Cigna, WellCare, so you can compare plans across multiple carriers. Third, choose the plan with the benefits that are right for you and your needs.
I call every year to compare plans that fit my needs.
Folks, I make the call every year as soon as the Medicare annual enrollment period starts because it makes the whole process easy and stress-free for me. It's a free call, a free consultation, and there's no obligation. Get started on your 3 C's and make the call to speak to a licensed insurance agent now.
For a free no-obligation consultation, call 800-491-8048.
Welcome back. President Biden is set to deliver remarks in just a few minutes on today's release of 24 hostages held by Hamas and the start of a 4-day pause in the fighting. News Nation's Kelly Meyer is live at the White House. Kelly, what more are you learning there?
Well, Nick, you know, the president has been working on this really since the early days of the war between Israel and Hamas, working with the leaders in the Middle East to get this hostage deal. Now, as he has said, he's keeping his fingers crossed that American hostages will be among those 50 hostages that will be released. We heard from the White House earlier today that they aren't expecting the 2 American women and 1 American child to be included in that initial release, but they are holding out hope that they will be included in those 50 that will be released over the next few days. We are watching to see what President Biden might say in the next few minutes as he is on Nantucket for the Thanksgiving holiday. But he is set to deliver the remarks. The White House is putting out that notice that he will speak on the release of these hostages in the next several minutes here. Nick?
Are you being told that you'll be given a heads up and be flagged when that's about to happen?
Yeah, we should be given a heads up. We have the White House traveling pool of reporters that are with the president on Nantucket that generally give us a heads up just before he is set to speak. We don't have any idea or sense of exactly what he might say, but we know from covering this that the president has been personally involved, and this has remained a top priority of his, as we saw when he went to Israel and met with Israeli families that either were victims or knew someone that was killed or have family members that are hostages or unaccounted for. He met with them and spoke with them for over an hour, we know, pushing back some of his other appointments. We know that he also spoke virtually with the families of the American hostages for some time. So this is something that he's been following. Members of his administration have been closely paying attention to. Also, much of it kept secret, really, with these secret cell of aides over there working to get these hostages, particularly the American hostages, released and getting that humanitarian aid into Gaza.
Kelly, you talk about the president being directly involved in the negotiation process. Is the White House, is the administration seeing today as a win?
I would say, I don't know if they would categorize it with those words. I think they have been speaking about this pretty empathetically and are just concerned about these families being reunited with their family members that have been kept hostage in this war. I think they are definitely happy that this deal came together and feel as though that was a success. But at the same time, as you see the president keeping his fingers crossed, in a sense, it feels as though they are holding their breath and making sure that these hostages clear that finish line. It's almost as though it's not until they are safe in their families' arms or safe here on American soil that they will feel they can fully celebrate this and fully celebrate it when all American hostages are released. The president even asked about American detainees in Russia, Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan, saying that they are continuing to work for their release. So I think they're not categorizing it with those particular words, but I think once they are able to get all American hostages freed in this particular situation, they will be able to, in a sense, celebrate it, but just be happy that they are home.
Kelly, of course, we're waiting to hear remarks from the president, and as soon as he makes himself available, we will take that live. But, Kelly, I have to believe also, I want to throw up some poll numbers, Kelly, because everything in Washington, of course, is seen through a political lens, and we do know that Mr. Biden has struggled as of late to actually win support from voters. In fact, we're looking at numbers right now, Kelly, that are on your screen that talk about only 51% approve of the way Mr. Biden is handling the Hamas-Israel war, and 41% disapprove. Those are not any numbers that an administration would like to see. And then, Kelly, when we continue that, we continue to look at the numbers that Mr. Biden is dealing with right now. We're looking at how Mr. Biden continues to struggle within his own party. Views on Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas war: 11% say his job performance has been excellent, 24% say good, 28% say fair, but 37% say poor. These are not numbers that anyone would want, particularly when we know that the progressive left has really just been slamming Mr. Biden and his administration over their unfettered support for Israel.
Yeah, and we're definitely seeing this deal coming together at a time when we've seen immense pressure on President Biden, particularly, as you said, from his own party and more progressive members of his party. And I think it's showing that split, especially among younger voters, very critical of how the Biden administration has been handling this. But as we've been questioning White House officials here, they firmly stand by their continued support to Israel in this, in their process of trying to defeat Hamas. They said they will continue to support them militarily and defensively as they try to take out this terrorist group. But that has been raising concerns, especially among younger voters and some in the president's own party, about the number of civilian deaths that we have seen in Gaza. We've seen, those protests with those with red paint on their hands as they feel that there is blood on the Biden administration's hands, they say, for, giving these defensive materials to Israel as they continue to fight against Hamas, but seeing those civilian casualties. And as we press the White House about this, they say they do not want to see any civilian casualties. They would like that number to be zero, but they are also blaming this on Hamas, that they could also have the ability to end this now as well. Nick.
And again, we're talking about 24 hostages have been released. A truce between Israel and Hamas is in action. The released hostages include 13 Israelis, 10 Thai citizens, and 1 Filipino citizen. And this, of course, is according to Qatar's foreign ministry. And we understand now, Kelly, that those released hostages are receiving medical treatment right now. And we expect the president may even speak to that as well, and the next steps while this ceasefire is in place. We also know that the IDF is speaking to reporters right now. And Kelly, as we continue to even listen in on that conversation with reporters that he's speaking to in both Hebrew and then eventually in English, we will have more information to even go from. And I expect that once that's done is when we will hear from Mr. Biden. It would seem to me, Kelly, that Mr. Biden probably would not speak until after he has aligned with everyone else who's been involved in this negotiation process. Is this about how that works to your reporting?
It seems as though, that's the case as we're seeing the transfer of the hostages and the prisoner release of those Palestinian prisoners. It's set for right now at 1:45 p.m. Eastern that the president is set to speak. That could be pushed back a little bit. We're still monitoring that. I'm checking the time and notifications on my phone here below. But we do know in terms of, as you were saying, that we're seeing this initial transfer. We're expecting to see similar sizes of groups of hostages being released over the course of this four-day pause. And as the president and the White House has said, they are hoping that those American hostages will be included in at least one of these groups that comes out over the next several days. But again, not expected in this first group. But as we said, similar sizes coming out over the next several days. And then, as they said, this hostage deal was structured in such a way that would encourage the future release of these hostages as well. So when we tried to press White House officials on, okay, we got this done, what about the others? Because there are more women and children, and of course more hostages and more unaccounted for Americans that are still remain hostage at the hands of Hamas at this moment. They said right now they're just taking it essentially day by day, getting through this phase one, as they're calling it, of the hostage deal, and then moving on to make sure they could get the others released.
Kelly Meyer with the latest from the White House. Kelly, of course, we will continue to follow this situation. Kelly, thank you. And as Kelly said, we are expecting to hear from the president in the next couple of minutes. We'll bring that to you live as soon as it happens. And we're also learning that the freed hostages include a young boy named Ohad, who turned 9 while in captivity. Now, Ohad and his mother, his grandparents, were taken from their kibbutz on October 7th. Our Marnie Hughes spoke to his relatives earlier this week.
His 9th birthday already 4 weeks ago in captivity. His 9th birthday. Is a very smart boy. He knows how to solve the Rubik's Cube. He plays sports, plays tennis and soccer.
Plays sports, plays tennis, plays soccer like every other little boy, and his family simply wants him home. We're still waiting to hear from an update from President Biden on this first wave of hostages who have been released. We'll be right back.
My dry eyes made me a burning, stinging 5 times a day.
Makeup smearing, drops user.
I want another option. That's not another drop.
Tyrvaya. It's not another drop. It's the first and only nasal spray for dry eye. Tyrvaya treats the signs and symptoms of dry eye disease fast by helping your body produce its own real tears. Common side effects include sneezing, cough, and throat and nose irritation.
Relying only on drops? Not me. My own real tears are my relief.
Ask your eye doctor about Tyrvaya.
If your moderate to severe Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms are stopping you in your tracks, choose Stelara from the start and move toward relief after the first dose, with injections every 2 months.
Stelara may increase your risk of infections, some serious, and cancer. Before treatment, get tested for TB. Tell your doctor if you've had an infection, flu-like symptoms, sores, new skin growths, have had cancer, or if you need a vaccine. PRES, a rare potentially fatal brain condition, may be possible. Some serious allergic reactions and lung inflammation can occur.
Feel unstoppable. Ask your doctor how lasting remission can start with Stelara. Janssen can help you explore cost support options.
When you're looking for answers, it's good to have help, because the right information at the right time may make all the difference. At Humana, we know that's especially true when you're looking for a Medicare supplement insurance plan. That's why we're offering 7 things every Medicare supplement should have. It's yours free, just for calling the number on your screen. And when you call, a knowledgeable licensed agent producer can answer any questions you have and help you choose the plan that's right for you. The call is free, and there's no obligation. You see, Medicare covers only about 80% of your Part B medical expenses. The rest is up to you. That's why so many people purchase Medicare supplement insurance plans like those offered by Humana. They're designed to help you save money and pay some of the costs Medicare doesn't. Depending on the Medicare supplement plan you select, you could have no deductibles or copayments for doctor visits, hospital stays, emergency care, and more. You can keep the doctors you have now, ones you know and trust, with no referrals needed. Plus, you can get medical care anywhere in the country, even when you're traveling. With Humana, you get a competitive monthly premium and personalized service from a healthcare partner working to make healthcare simpler and easier for you. You can choose from a wide range of standardized plans. Each one is designed to work seamlessly with Medicare and help save you money. So how do you find the plan that's right for you? One that fits your needs and your budget. Call Humana now at the number on your screen for this free guide. It's just one of the ways that Humana is making healthcare simpler. And when you call, a knowledgeable licensed agent producer can answer any questions you have and help you choose the plan that's right for you. The call is free and there's no obligation. You know Medicare won't cover all your medical costs, so call now and see why a Medicare supplement plan from a company like Humana just might be the answer.
iPhone 15 Pro, your husband deserves it.
Carolers, to tell me you want a new iPhone, a better plan is Verizon.
This Black Friday weekend, turn any iPhone in any condition into a new iPhone 15 Pro with titanium and iPad and Apple Watch SE, all on us. Only on Verizon.
How does Klein & Spector get among the most big verdicts and settlements of any law firm in the country? Because Klein & Spector is an award-winning team with 5 doctor lawyers, the most of any firm in the United States. And that's why the New York Times calls Klein & Spector a powerhouse law firm. So if a defective product, motor vehicle accident, or medical malpractice caused a catastrophic injury, call Klein & Spector.
Welcome back. We're taking a live look right now at the West Bank, where Palestinians are filling the streets in celebration of prisoners being released by Israel as part of today's hostage deal. All of those prisoners were arrested in protest against the war, some convicted of trying to kill Israeli troops. Paul Nadeau is a former hostage negotiator and joins me live right now. Paul, I know that you have been watching the developments of today, and I have to believe that there's a part of you, since you've worked in this space, that is pleased to see some of these hostages released, but is also saying, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. You said it perfectly. We're seeing some progress, but it doesn't mean that there's an end to this conflict in any way or shape, because we all know that this is a conflict that's been going on for a very long time. The fact that we're seeing actually some movement and some cooperation is a good sign, and certainly it is a good sign for all the hostages being released and their families, and the overall atmosphere that this is creating is a positive one. But I do caution as to the thing that we cannot feel too comfortable about is that this is not over, and it's not going to be over for a long time, if ever. But the fact is that there are some progression that's being made, and I think that that's very positive. I see the joy in so many people's eyes and hearts as this is moving forward in a very positive way.
Paul, is this also a situation where Hamas knew they were planning the attack on October 7th? Is this also part of their strategy? At some point, we'll give back a few hostages while we do X, Y, Z, or is this all by chance?
I think this is as a result of the attack that they received in retaliation, because they were hit hard, and we know that it continued to be a very hard assault in response by Israel. So at some point, I'm imagining, and of course I could be wrong about this, but I'm imagining that someone in Hamas, their leadership, has said, you know what, we've got to regroup. We've got to think this thing out. Maybe it's time that we start to negotiate and stall for a little bit of time. That's one possibility. Again, it could be something entirely different. But I do think that Hamas may have felt that the attack was so severe on them that they had to regroup, rethink, and take a little bit of a break while they summon up some ideas on what to do next.
Paul, how difficult is it to house, move, and care for hostages when you're trying to negotiate the release of Palestinian prisoners?
It's very, very difficult. You can imagine where they are underground, where they're keeping these people. Everybody needs to be fed. Everybody needs to be taken to the washroom or being given something to go to the washroom in. There are human needs that need to be taken care of. And the fact that you need to keep people isolated and away from each other, I can't imagine if they're sitting together in a group, what they're allowed to do, what they're allowed to say, how they're allowed to behave, because they are prisoners, they are hostages, and they are under the complete control of a dominance that will not tolerate certain behaviors. There is a point where people will listen and obey to everything that is being said to them. And to try to keep this all in one spot is next to impossible, especially with the attacks that are going all around you. And so the movement of hostages may become necessary, and that in itself requires a lot of work and a lot of planning.
Paul, you just said something I think that may have taken a few people aback, like it just did me. Hadn't even thought about the fact that, Paul, they're not all sitting in one space together. the need to separate. What might those conditions be like, Paul? If you don't mind breaking down what you think this could be in this particular situation. If we have more than 100 people that we're still holding on to, Nick, they're not sitting in one room. We have them spread out or separated so that they don't communicate?
Yes, that's part of it. Plus, there's strength in numbers, right? When you want to keep someone completely under your control, then the fewer people that you have in one spot, the more successful you will be, because you don't want them talking, you don't want them communicating, you don't want them planning against you. And so to be a complete controller, if I could use that word, is that you need to make sure that nothing will get in your way. You are the dominant one. You are in control. You don't want a large group of people sitting in one spot. So let's separate them. Let's keep them apart. Let's keep them in several different spots so that there can't be any retaliation towards us, or there can't be a disagreement. They can't start to say, well, we're all banding together. Well, we know that that is next to impossible. However, it's the mental state of the hostages. You want to make them fear their outcome, their very lives. So that's a very important thing, is that control requires not only the physical control of a person, it requires the mental control of the group and the individual. And so that's one of the things that we deal with.
Paul, also in this situation, when we're talking about those who have been released, 13 Israeli hostages, along with 10 Thai citizens and 1 Filipino, is there a strategy involved also in who you release? And again, I know that you are looking at this from the outside, but in a situation like this, is there a strategy in place with that? Maybe they're not necessarily ill or people who don't hold value, but they're not necessarily central to the mission of Hamas.
Absolutely. I think that the leadership, whoever is holding these hostages, are deciding when is best to release certain individuals. For example, Americans. When do we release the Americans? When do we release the Canadians? Whatever. Is that, okay, we have to do this strategically because we want something in the end. If we give everything out front, it weakens our position perhaps. And so there is some strategizing going on with the hostage takers and Hamas in when the unfolding of all this will happen. How much can we get? How much can we keep over the heads of the ones who are watching globally? This is really unfolding. They're getting a lot of attention. I think that this is one of the reasons that they're doing it in this way. They want the attention. They want people to be focusing on them and looking at them and saying, well, you know what, at least they're doing this. But holding back on certain things may be extremely advantageous to them.
Paul, we also can't help but notice what we seem to see as Hamas being really effective in the messaging game. And I say that simply because we have seen the rise of support for Palestine and for Hamas, or anti-Israel movement in the extreme left of the party here in the United States. How is it that even in this situation that they have been so effective with their messaging, to the point where the ceasefire right now is being called upon as one, say, hey, it needs to continue. These 4 days won't be enough. It seems as though it won't be enough to necessarily satisfy those to the extreme left.
That's almost impossible to answer because there's so much history to this. There's so much that has been ingrained in each and every individual involved on both sides. And their beliefs, their religion, however they respond to this world, that's something that has been drilled in them for a very, very long time. Hamas is going to use this. It's a psychological play here. It's a psychological way of saying, okay, let's gain some favor by doing X, Y, and Z, and the masses will follow. And I believe that because of how so many people have internalized what's been going on for these centuries, is that they are very willing to overlook certain things for the entire picture. It's tough to answer. It really is. I'm not in the shoes of anyone. I'm not in the Palestinian shoes or the Israeli shoes. And I can't imagine what it would be like to be them. I'm looking at this from a North American individual, and I can't begin to empathize and to understand what is really going on inside each individual. We know ourselves as human beings. We might be willing to overlook certain things for the greater outcome and say, well, you know what, yeah, he or she has done this or they have done that, but I'm focusing on the outcome here.
Paul Nadeau, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about the situation at hand. And again, you and I both and so many others will be waiting to hear from President Biden to see what he has to say and the latest on the condition of these released hostages. Paul Nadeau, thanks again for joining us. We're still awaiting an update from President Biden on the first wave of hostages who have been released. We will continue to follow this story, and we'll be right back at the top of the hour.
John Walsh here. Guess what? Occasional joint pain, you're going down. That's why there's Omega XL, a powerful joint pain relief supplement. It's natural, it's drug-free, it's really small, easy to swallow. It has over 35 years of clinical research supporting it. The results are undeniable.
Last week I walked 6 blocks. I was so proud of myself. You will remember what did it to you, and it was Omega XL.
I'm taking Omega XL because it works for me. And if it didn't, I wouldn't be backing it.
Go to OmegaXL.com/John Walsh or call the number at the bottom of your screen right now. Buy 1 bottle of Omega XL, get 1 free. That's 2 bottles for only $39.95. Plus, you'll also receive a bottle of Vitamin XL D3 absolutely free.
Meet Gold Bond Daily Healing, a powerhouse lotion that moisturizes, heals, and smooths dry skin with 7 moisturizers and 3 vitamins. And new Gold Bond Healing Sensitive, clinically shown to heal and moisturize dry, sensitive skin. Gold Bond.
This is an important message for parents. Has your child experienced a mental health crisis, eating disorder, attempted or completed suicide, or been sexually exploited through social media? You're not alone. From 2009 to 2019, the number of teens feeling sad or hopeless increased by 40%. And tragically, between 1981 and 2020, suicide among 12 to 16-year-olds has increased by 146%. Recent disclosures from company insiders revealed that social media companies knowingly use hidden algorithms to addict vulnerable teens to their platforms, exposing them to harmful content, bullying, and sexual exploitation. The Social Media Victims Law Center has received national attention for its efforts to hold companies accountable for causing these harms. If your child experienced a mental health crisis, eating disorder, attempted or completed suicide, or was sexually exploited through social media use, call for a free consultation.
Upon his first day of retirement, Marcus Rogers made a contract with himself. I will never again work for another man or woman. Or Todd, especially Todd. I lay down my badge, abandon my corporate phone plan, and I'll get a new plan with Consumer Cellular, without a contract, without sacrificing coverage. Let's go, birds. When freedom calls, we're here to answer.
Hi, folks. Joe Namath here. And if you're having a hard time hearing, call MD Hearing, because they changed my life, and they can change yours too. I was wearing expensive hearing aids for years until a good friend of mine told me about MD Hearing. I bought a pair of the hearing aids with no doctor visit, no prescription, and no hassle. I got fitted right over the phone, and I've never had a better pair of hearing aids. I'm even wearing them right now.
Call now and get 2 rechargeable Neo hearing aids for just $297 with a free portable charging case and free shipping. The rechargeable Neo is nearly invisible with its tiny in-the-ear canal design, and you can get 2 rechargeable Neo hearing aids with a 45-day risk-free trial, free shipping, and free lifetime U.S.-based support for only $297.
Call my friends at MD Hearing and get the over-the-counter hearing aids that I use for you.
Call 800-593-3958.
We need some help.
I know. I'm going to CashNetUSA.com. And if approved, we can have the money in our account as soon as the same business day.
Go to CashNetUSA.com to apply for the money you need.
Icy hot. Ice works fast. Heat makes it last. Feel the power of contrast therapy. So you can rise from pain. Icy hot.
It's here. Get ready. It's Cyberg Monday at Omaha Steaks. That means you'll get 8 free ultra juicy burgers and save 50% off site-wide. Save big on favorites like fork tender filet mignon, juicy chicken breast, sides, desserts, and so much more. Hurry, our Cyberg sale ends soon. Visit omahasteaks.com/TV today.